Hello and welcome back to Misrepresented. I'm your host, Lisa Opie, and I'm really excited to catch up with Whitney Sellers, who is
Yay!
just crushing it in the real estate industry.
Thank you.
So we met through pageants like way back in the
Yes,
day. How long has it
yes.
been?
Oh my gosh. What is it? I want to say 2014 or 15.
14 or
Yeah,
15.
it's been
Yeah,
years.
we went to Miss Florida
Yeah.
USA together.
Yep.
I'm like, here
Yep.
we are.
I
Oh my
know.
gosh. So
So
like give
crazy.
me a life update. Like, what have you been up
Gosh. Well,
to?
now I'm a mom.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest life update. I'm a mom to
Yes.
2 boys, and I have a third on the way, a
Oh
third
my
boy.
gosh.
Yes,
Three
so pray
boys.
for me. It's a lot. It's a lot.
I feel like it's
Um,
nice to be a mom because you're like the queen of the house
it,
and like you get the royal treatment.
I
They
do feel
appreciate
that
you.
way. I
Yeah.
do. And it's like, and I have a husband who really believes in like the man having the masculine role and me being like the queen of the house. He really
Love
like loves
that.
that and
Yeah.
wants that for me. So it is fun. It's like I want a daughter someday to have all the girly things, but being a
Right.
boy mom's kind of cool. It's like a
Yeah.
flex.
Right.
It is.
So we have a lot to cover today.
Yes.
So let's start at the very beginning, right?
Okay.
Early life. What was it like growing up in your hometown? What did you study in college?
Okay, so I grew up in Ohio, which is
Hmm.
much different than South Florida, where
Totally
I live now.
different.
It's totally different. It's, you have country and you have land and you have not a whole lot of opportunity where I was from. So,
Mhm.
growing up, it was like humble beginnings. My parents worked really hard. They were small business owners, owned a lot of real estate. So I grew up kind
Wow.
of like an entrepreneurial kid. So, like 5 and 6 years old when kids are outside playing, I'm working on properties with my parents.
I love
So it
that.
was cool, like later in life, but at the
Mhm.
time you felt like you kind of like missed out on your childhood. So I had a little bit of that, but I ended up going to Kent State University for college in Ohio, and I majored in broadcast journalism. So like it felt like being in my little hometown in Ohio that I was kind of always this like big fish in a little pond.
Mhm.
So I wanted something that would like take me out of that. And I felt like
Yeah.
TV would be that thing. So
Yeah.
that's what I kind of focused on in college.
Oh my gosh. So how did you end up in Miami?
So, oh gosh, long story. So right out of college, well, first I did an internship with Access Hollywood in Los Angeles. That was
Stop,
like,
what?
yeah, that
I
was like the
didn't when was
first, that
that?
was, oh
After pageants
gosh,
or before?
before. Yeah.
How come I never knew
I know,
that?
I don't know. I never really like,
What?
yeah. So I worked there. And
That's
then what's the
amazing.
crazy part is, so I was an intern. And then while I'm interning, Billy Bush was the host of the show at the time, him and Kit.
Okay.
And Billy asked me to babysit for him while I was there. So I did because I was like, I'm interning. What else am I going to do? I'm living
Yeah.
in LA for like, 12 weeks. So I ended up babysitting for him. And then, right at the end of my internship, they offered me a job, but I hadn't
What?
graduated yet. So they were like, for you to work here, you have to have a degree. So I bumped my graduation date up, hustled, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I'm going to get this job. As soon as I graduated, the job was no longer available.
You're kidding.
No, but Kit Hoover, the host of
Okay.
Access Hollywood, still today, she needed a nanny and she remembered that I babysat for Billy. So she called me and was like, hey, come to California, be my nanny, live with us, we'll pay you, you'll live with us for free. And then when your opportunity comes in TV, I'll help you get a job anywhere you want. So I was
Wow.
like, done. And that's what I did. I moved there. But oh gosh, it was just a life lesson, I would say, because I was 21 years old taking care of 3 kids and I was not ready for that.
Oh my
Not
gosh.
ready. And the ages were like 5 to 11, I think, or 10 or 11. And, you know, I, I always wanted kids, but I wanted them a little bit later. I didn't want them at
Yeah, I
21
feel
years
like
old.
21, you're still a kid.
Yeah. So it's like, I was living there. I was 45 minutes away from anyone that I actually knew. So I kind of battled depression. And during that time, my mom and dad had a house in South Florida as well. So
Okay.
they, still in Ohio, but also one in Florida. And so a bunch of things happened in LA that really just led me to the point where I didn't want to live there anymore. I was like, it's not for me. I love California, but it's
Mhm.
not for me. I got to be closer to friends, family. I didn't have a car.
Oh my
So it was a
gosh.
lot. And I'm
Yeah, not
like,
having a car in LA
yeah,
is you
and
can't.
21 years old, it's like you want to explore and you want to go do
Yeah.
things, and I couldn't. I was like a mom.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I ended up moving here to South Florida, and that's kind of what brought me here officially.
And were you doing broadcast journalism here as well, or?
So it's interesting. I actually started working at a car dealership, but I didn't
Okay.
do sales. I did their TV
Oh,
commercials.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
and I
Yeah.
was their like marketing coordinator. I did events for them, and the interesting thing there is I was a personal assistant to the owner of the dealership, and he was blind, like no vision whatsoever. So I
What?
kind of like became his caretaker and like his
Yeah.
guide. And he really taught me a lot about the financial markets. He taught me a lot about business and philanthropy. And that has led me into like everything I do now. So it's really cool how things work out. You're not like
Yeah.
planning to work at a car dealership. If I never would have taken that job, I never would have come to Florida.
Right,
So
that's so random.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did you ever get the opportunity to go back to Access Hollywood?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So the sad thing is I kind of screwed kid over, and it was like a thing that hurt me for a long time because what happened was during the time I was in LA, I had a lot of bad things happen. Like I was in a very bad relationship. We broke up. I was in situations where like family members were passing away. And then the final straw was I had a really good friend who had a drug overdose.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that happened. And I go home for his funeral. On the way back from his funeral, flying back to LA from Ohio, my grandfather passed away.
Oh my
And I'm like, you know what?
gosh.
And my parents feared for me. They're like, okay, you're by yourself. You're in LA. Not that I'm like into drugs, but drugs are accessible. Like, you're
Mhm.
sad. What's going to happen? We
And you're
need you to move home.
alone,
Yeah.
yeah.
So my parents like really fought for me and were like, you need to come home like
Mhm.
now. So I gave kid a 2 week notice before I got back to LA. But then when my grandfather passed away and I had to fly back in like 4 more days, I'm like, I can't come back. Like,
Oh
I don't
my
have the money. I
gosh.
was in a really tough financial spot. So I ended up kind of screwing her over. I gave her a 2 week notice that turned into like a 5 day notice.
Oh my
And yeah,
gosh.
I burned a bridge and I tried to stay connected with them. And then there were a couple opportunities like with the NFL, with ESPN, and even Access Hollywood. Like the producers still stayed in contact with me, but
Mhm.
I kind of like shut that door. I was
Wow.
like, TV's not for me. You know, it was just like I was learning so much about it. And um, I don't know. Not that you have to like sell your soul, but I felt that way. It's like I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have
Yeah.
children. And it's like I don't want to be 50 years old and still not where I want to be
Like, still
in
working
TV.
your way up
Yeah. Or
because
like
it
doing the
takes
news at 2 in
forever.
the
Yeah,
morning.
and
It's like,
especially as a woman, I feel
yes,
like it's a lot harder for us
it
because
is.
especially in TV
It is.
entertainment,
It
yeah.
is. And it's like, especially if you want to do sports as a woman. Like, I mean, I get irritated sometimes when I'm watching and it is a woman because I'm like, I don't, how does she know what she's even talking about with sports? But I was that girl. I
Yeah.
used to be that. It's like, so it's tough. I feel for the women that have to do it or want to do it, but if they can do it and they excel, like more power to them. I wish I could have, but I think my priorities were just in a bigger place. Like TV just didn't do it for me.
So why did you change your careers and why real estate?
It's so interesting. Like I didn't really plan for a change. It kind of happened. So Miss Florida actually had a little bit to do with that because
Okay.
I was working at a car dealership and because my boss was blind, he was in charge of advertising, but he didn't like to do like print advertising because he couldn't see it. His biggest
Mhm.
thing was doing grassroots nonprofit stuff. So yeah,
Wow.
so one big thing that he did is he would do these like presenting sponsorships, $25,000, and we'd have vehicles on display and he'd sponsor some initiative. Well, one that he did that really tied into like what I do now, their name's Place of Hope, and they would house children in foster care, victims of human trafficking, and it's all in South Florida. And they've really, really helped people, and they use real estate to provide a campus for all these kids. So I
Wow.
found that out. And what's also interesting is one of the people at Place of Hope nominated me to compete in Miss Florida. So they're like, listen, you work
Oh
with
my
55
gosh.
nonprofits, you do what all these girls do, you just need a platform to share it.
Yeah.
You just need to go and do it. So I like researched it and I'm like, okay, so to get to Miss Florida, you have to qualify. So I entered the first pageant of the year, which was Miss Art Deco.
And you won.
Yeah, and I knew nothing about it. I was like, is this even like a real pageant? Because I don't know. And then the Art Deco sash is different than everyone else's. So I was
Mhm.
like, is
Is it
this the same?
legit?
Yeah, like I didn't
Yeah.
know. So I was like, whatever, I'll just do it because it is the first one of the year. And if I lose, there's several opportunities to
Yep.
continue. But then I ended up winning and I was like, wow. So then started training for Miss Florida. And as it's going on, I'm doing all the things as the Art Deco title holder and doing more
Mhm.
nonprofit stuff to where it grew to over 100 nonprofits that I had worked with by the
Wow,
time we hit
Whitney. Oh
the
my
Florida stage. I know.
gosh.
And I had no idea like all this was happening. And so we did Miss Florida. And then after Miss Florida, it's like to me, it was such a high in life that like right afterwards, it was another like dip in depression. Not like super depressed, but
No,
it's
I
like,
get it. Yeah,
yeah,
like you're
you're
with all
like,
these girls, you're building up to something and then it
yeah,
just ends. Like
yeah,
it literally just ends.
yeah. And so you're like, what now? And
Yeah.
it's like I've been to Access Hollywood and I've done all these things. I've done so many big things in my life that you're like, what's next? So
Mhm.
at that point, I kind of like went off the radar a little bit. Like social media wasn't what it is today. So I was just like,
Yeah.
not really into things and just kind of like going through the job that I had at the dealership again. But my boss sold his dealership. And when he did that, that was kind of like my out because I never
Mhm.
wanted to leave him because he needed my help because he couldn't see. But I
Yeah.
was like, I can't just leave this guy. Like I knew I didn't want to do that anymore. But when he sold the dealership, an opportunity as a real estate speaker presented itself. And I knew real estate and have
Wow.
known it my entire life. I just never voiced it to people. I
So
just
how
like,
did that come out? Like,
so my dad, if you're familiar with the book Rich Dad Poor Dad and Robert
yep.
Kiyosaki, my dad is a mentor for Robert Kiyosaki's company.
Wait, that's huge.
Yeah, this
Oh my
happened when I was like a
gosh.
kid. He's
Okay,
been
wow.
he's been a mentor since I was 11 years old, and
Lucky you.
it's so crazy. It's like people read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm like, I read that book when I was like a kid because we
Wow.
were in that space, you know. And my
Yeah.
dad was a student of Robert's. Like he went through the whole process of becoming an investor. He's done more than 800 flips nationwide, and
Oh
he's
my
done all
gosh.
these things: commercial, land development, mobile home parks, and it's crazy because they needed somebody in the millennial, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so a millennial essentially
Yeah.
to
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 reach
come
that
in.
crowd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because everybody that wants to be an investor is 40, 50, 60. They're not 19, 20,
Mm-hmm.
30s now, but they never were before. So um, they had an event in Miami. My dad called me and he's like, listen, you need to go to the event. You need to go through the process. You need to take the classes. You need to learn this stuff. And we want you to come out and like
Oh
work for the
my
company if you can
gosh.
do it. But the one big thing about it is you have to be investing. You can't just go out there and be a salesperson. You have
Yeah,
to
you
know
have
what
to
you're
have like
doing.
the credentials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to go through the process too. I had to take the
Wow.
classes, and in a matter of 6 months, I basically was able to quit all my jobs because of real estate. The money coming in
Really?
just supported it. And so,
So they made you buy the property to be an investor, but
yep,
then you were being so
that's it.
rewarded.
Yeah, it just came
Wow.
out. And then after that, you have to kind of work your way up too. So I wasn't a speaker at the beginning. I was like working in the back of the room where they do the events and you
Mhm.
enroll people in more education. And then another thing led to another. I believe in the universe and like everything working out.
Yeah.
And I started as just a rep, and then somebody quit, and then they needed a manager, and then somebody quit and they needed another speaker. And a woman was pregnant on her way to an event to speak and she couldn't do it, so they called me, and it was like everything
Oh
just
my
worked out.
gosh.
And then I ended up being the top speaker in 2019, right before COVID. So it's
Wow.
crazy how TV led me to that, because if I never would have had the background in communications, I probably never would have been
Exactly.
able to do it.
And I feel like this is so much bigger and so much more
Oh
rewarding. Like
gosh,
you're actually changing people's
it's
lives.
so crazy. And public
Wow.
speaking is like the number one job in the world financially.
Mhm.
Like you can make so much money doing it if you do it the right
Really?
way. Yeah,
Oh
it's
my gosh.
crazy
I
because
need to
it's
get over my stage
sales.
fright.
For real, for real. I mean, sales, but at the same time, like you do have to know what you're doing on
Yeah.
the subject you're speaking, and it's cool. It's a cool
Wow.
thing.
So were the classes hard? Like what went into all that?
They were, because it's like, it's not just Robert Kiyosaki. The company was called Legacy, and they had several brands, but Kiyosaki is the most well known.
Mhm.
But if you've read his book or anything, it's not just buy a house, rent it out, or buy a house and sell it. It's like there's so much more to it. There's so many different things
Yeah.
you can do. I think the biggest thing is really understanding that there's rules to the game, and everything we've been taught as kids through the school system is like the exact opposite of what you have to do.
Thank you for saying
You're welcome.
that. I
You're
know.
welcome.
They're like tricking us in school
They
to just
are.
like be stuck forever.
I'm serious. Like we, as a mom of 3 now, almost 3, I want to homeschool my kids because I don't want them to
Mhm.
have that mentality of just like go to school, get a job, work for somebody else. It's like it's a
Yeah.
rat race.
It
And
is a
it's
rat
like
race. I'm so glad you said that because I was
yeah.
homeschooled and I feel like I would have a totally different mindset if I wasn't
Wow.
homeschooled. Like I wouldn't know how to think for myself. I'd
Wow.
be in that rat race.
Yeah.
And the reason why I have freedom right now is because I knew how to think for
Wow.
myself and figure things out. So
Wow.
I
Well,
recommend homeschooling.
and that is reassuring to me because I've seen you go, just
Yeah.
everything since it's Florida, you've blown up, and I've been such a supporter and a fan.
Well,
I mean
you
that.
too. Oh my
I
God. I've
know,
been
but
watching from a
I
distance,
know,
but I'm
me
like,
too.
she's crushing
I
it.
know.
Like you're doing
Same to
so
you.
amazing.
Same to you. So it's reassuring because you hear
Yeah.
people all the time. They're like, "Oh, your kids are going to be antisocial if they're homeschooled." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, maybe they'll just be selective on who they socialize with. I don't know that
That's
they'll
it.
be."
I'm selective.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of anxiety. Stage
Yes.
fright is one of them.
Yes.
But you know what? Like you can overcome that and you can
Yep.
learn, like put them in pageants.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's so many other things you can do than just go
Yeah.
to school and be there stuck for 8 hours a day, told when you can go to the bathroom, when you can eat, when you
Yeah.
can. And it's like, especially for boys, gosh, telling my 2.5-year-old what he has to do when he wants to do it is like, you can't. They
Yeah.
need that freedom to just explore. So yeah.
No, I totally definitely recommend
Cool.
homeschooling for sure.
Good.
Okay, so misrepresented is all about like women being misrepresented, right? So in your
Yes.
industry, do you feel like there's any like judgment as a woman speaker? Do people take you less seriously? Do you feel like you have to work harder?
I think yes. So I feel like one of the big things was you have to prove yourself. It's like, especially in a male dominant industry, it seems to be the way that like they have the skill set naturally and it's expected. So for me, I had to go out there and really deliver every time, because if not, if you do an event and you don't produce, they put money into that event. So if they put $1 million to
Yeah.
put the event on and you didn't sell anything, it's like, Okay,
Oh my
then
gosh,
you're
that's too
out.
much
Yeah, it's a
pressure.
lot of pressure.
Wow.
But that I became the top speaker. I was closing like 40 to 50% of the room,
Oh my
not even trying
gosh.
to, just telling my story
Yeah.
and explaining like that you can use real estate to help people and you can use it, not just to have a rental, but you could retire your family. You could the tax
Mhm.
incentives, all the asset protection that comes with it, just so many different things, especially if you want to, get out of that traditional system of working a 9 to 5 and
Yeah.
take matters into your own hands. So I had to really crush it, which meant going out every single time there was an event, never saying no. And I worked myself to death. It felt like it was
Mhm.
like any chance I could get out there to prove myself I was doing it, which is no way to live either. Cause you
Yeah.
just like constantly on defense and feeling like you have to like, I don't know, prove yourself.
But I feel like that also makes you grow as a person
It
because it's like a
does.
negative, but it's also a blessing.
Yes.
Like I was bullied growing
Yes.
up and I always had to prove them wrong,
Yep.
but through that I became better and better to the point
Yep.
where I don't even care
Yeah,
anymore. So
exactly.
by proving
Exactly.
yourself, you do grow like a lot.
I agree 100%. And I got to
Yeah.
that point where it was like, I don't, now where I'm at, I don't care if anybody knows that I can speak. I don't care if anybody knows that I'm good at real
Mhm.
estate. I just want to be a good mom and a good
I
wife.
love
It's
that.
come to
Yeah.
that, but I had to go through that to get there.
Oh my gosh. So speaking of
Yeah.
motherhood, like what
Yes.
is it like balancing your career with your two boys and one on the way?
It is the most difficult thing
Yeah.
ever. I mean,
I
I'm at
can't
the point,
imagine.
yeah, it's like so my husband and my husband's a builder and, he works in construction and does renovations. And the goal is for me to just be a full-time stay-at-home mom, other than
Mhm.
doing speaking engagements here and
And then
there. But
passive income through your
yeah,
investments.
and
Yeah.
not be like, I have my real estate license, but I can't be in an office doing showings all day. It's just, I
Mhm.
don't have the time. So what's hard is sleep. It's like I'm a Taurus and I
Oh
love
my
my
gosh, me
sleep.
too.
Yes. I'm an
I know
April
how much you love
baby.
sleep.
I do. And it's like I function because I sleep. And then when I can't
Yeah.
sleep, it's like I can only go so many days not sleeping
Yeah.
until I just break down. So that's the hardest part, is just managing it all. And partially my fault. All my kids are under the age of 3.
Oh
So
my
it
gosh.
makes it difficult, but that's the plan.
Oh
So
my gosh. So I love everything you're doing with your philanthropy. Like I
thank
feel
you.
like you are just Miss Service,
Oh, thank
right? And I
you.
love that
Thanks.
so much. So
Thanks.
tell me about how you found a way to combine real estate with philanthropy.
So I didn't know at first what I was going to do. I was, again, I believe in fate and like things working out. I don't think there's any coincidences in life. I think it just, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And so, one day I'm walking into the post office and there was a guy in there who worked in drug and alcohol treatment. And we just got to talking and he said, I'm getting ready to buy property. I'm going to turn it into a recovery home. I know nothing about real
Wow.
estate. And I'm like, whoa, that's interesting because
That's like divine
it
timing.
is. And like a lot of my friends from home have passed away from drug overdoses. I've got family
Mhm.
members who've been incarcerated or still are incarcerated or died of a drug overdose, that it makes it like close to my heart that I want to help that population. So I got to know him. We ended up getting this property. Come to find that there's so much funding for those vulnerable populations that if you buy a property, you can rent it to 6 people in drug and alcohol recovery and the government will pay it. Or
Oh
depending on how
wow.
you're set up, maybe insurance can pay it. Or if you're working with the Department of Corrections, they get a fee for you housing somebody who would otherwise go back into the system by providing
Wait,
a
that's
second chance. Yeah.
amazing. Oh my
Like in Palm Beach
gosh.
County at the time when I, was getting into it, now I'm stepping aside from it just because of being a mom. But when I was getting into it, it was like $1,000 a bed and you could rent to anybody, any amount between 6 and 12 people. So a property that would
Wow.
rent for $2,000 a month, you can make 6 grand by renting to 6
Mhm.
people at 1,000 a bed. And you're doing a good service. You're providing a second chance. You're putting people who, maybe shouldn't be incarcerated because it was like a white collar crime or something, or
Yeah.
marijuana, you
Mhm.
sold marijuana across state lines. Now you're going to face 30 years in prison. Well, somebody who on good behavior, they get out, you provide the second chance through housing. And by doing that, you're not only maximizing their opportunity, but you're maximizing yourself as an investor because you're
Yeah.
quadrupling your cash flow. You're getting
Wow.
tax incentives. So I learned a lot about that. I wrote a book on it. It's just like it became kind of my thing of being that like philanthropy real estate expert. So you can do it with several populations. It doesn't just have to be that. It could be women of domestic violence, victims of human
Mhm.
trafficking, people with any sort of mental or physical disability. There's so much funding, but you
Wow.
got to have the real estate. If you have the real
Yep.
estate, whether you own it or you lease it or rent it, that's the power it gives you.
I would love to see more people do that just to keep
Yeah.
people out of prison, especially for nonviolent crimes. I just
Yes.
feel like drug addiction, if you just send them to jail, it's not going to solve the
No.
problem at all. A
No.
recovery home
Yeah.
might,
Yeah.
but our system is so
It
corrupt right
is.
now. And I
It
just
is.
don't think that locking them up is going to help
No.
them at all. It might
No.
make it worse.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel. And that's kind
yeah.
of why I got into it. And then now, being a mom, I'm sort of shifting to the foster care, kids. That's more so what's
Wow.
like calling to me is the kids who need a second chance. So
Oh my
I work a
gosh.
lot with the nonprofit that nominated me for Miss Florida because I'm
Whitney,
just tall to them. So
you're
it's
so
crazy.
amazing. Oh my
Thank
gosh, I'm like
you.
getting emotional just
Aw,
listening to you talk because this
thanks.
is so
Thanks.
incredible.
Thank you.
Are you open to sharing some advice on getting started in real estate
Yeah.
investing for our listeners? Yeah.
Yes. So the biggest thing, I hate saying like get educated because it sounds salesy,
Mm-hmm.
but do it. Don't just
Yeah.
go to YouTube University because there's so much stuff out there that is garbage. You'll
Mm-hmm.
have one site saying that you can do something, one site saying you can't. People saying don't ever use credit cards. I use credit cards to buy real estate. And if I never would have used credit cards to buy real estate, I never would have bought real estate.
Oh my
It's like,
gosh.
but nobody thinks about that because they
Yeah.
hear credit's bad. And yes, there's bad things to it. But again, it's that mindset. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you have to think if you want to be an investor, you have to stop thinking like a consumer. And that's the biggest thing. So I think if people can get educated, learn about money and the rules of money and the rules of taxes, not to make anything political, but if you go all the way back to when everybody was, upset about Donald Trump not paying anything in taxes, there's a reason, and it's the law. There's rules to the game, but
Yeah.
that law is available to every person in this country. It's just a matter
Mm-hmm.
of learning what that law is and learning the rules of the game. So, yeah, if you can learn it, that'll change the game.
Oh my gosh, how scared were you when you bought your first property?
I was scared. It was with other people too. So it's like the burden wasn't on me, which is great.
Oh, you
But
can do that?
yeah,
Wait, teach me
yeah.
how to do
So I
that.
actually, right now, I'm a part of a project in Belize with like 10 other people. Yeah.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
invest less, it's
Yep.
less
Yep.
risk, less
Less
reward,
risk. Yep.
but it's
But
worth
yeah.
it. Yeah, it's safe.
Yep.
That's such a good starting point. Do you do
Yep.
that with most of your properties or?
It's become that,
Yeah.
now just because of the way that the world is and
Mm-hmm.
financially, it's like it makes more sense to if you have partners you trust. But aside from partners too, it's like you could do the same thing that I've done where you rent a property out to people coming out of prison, but you don't even have to buy the property. You could rent the property. It's called rental arbitrage.
Oh my
Or you could do it with
gosh.
Airbnb. You rent
What?
a property and then Airbnb it to somebody else. So it's like subleasing. But there's rules to doing that too. It's like
Okay.
if you Airbnb a property in Fort Lauderdale, in like Las Olas area, they're going to treat you like a hotel. So you're going to have hospitality rules that you wouldn't
Oh,
have if
wow.
you just were renting a single family outside of the city limits. So there's rules to it. It's
Yeah.
like if you can get educated on that, there's several companies out there that teach education on real estate. You will pay
Mm-hmm.
for it. It happens. But if you can do that and invest in yourself to do it, it's like if you look at it like college, you
Right.
spend 20 to 100 some thousand to go to
Literally. And
college.
you spend your life in
Yeah.
debt.
Yeah. And then you never even work in the field that you went to school for. It's
Thank
like,
you.
that's the biggest thing. So if you can invest in something that you actually are interested in,
Yeah.
and with real estate, it's like, even if you just learn how to purchase your own home at a discount, the right way, if you get something that's maybe distressed, you learn how to fix it up, like any
Mm-hmm.
of that, it's much more of a better investment, I think, than going to college.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I think Rich Dad Poor Dad says when you buy your first house, you don't live in it, you rent it
That's
out,
right.
right? So if
Right.
somebody's buying their first house
Mhm.
and they're going to rent it out, what is like your ideal property that you want to buy? Like a one bedroom, a studio,
So
or
it's hard to say
house?
only because I guess it depends where they're at. I know you probably
Okay.
have listeners from everywhere, but if you're, let's say we're in South Florida, we have, well, I shouldn't even say South Florida because it depends.
Yeah.
If you're in a market that has a lot of kids and family, you're going to want 3 bedrooms plus. If you're in a place where it's a lot of Gen Z that don't want to have kids, then you might prefer a 1 bedroom, something that's a
Mhm.
little smaller. But the other thing you could do is get a duplex, live in one side, rent out the other side, or you could still get a property, but if you're set up the right way legally, you don't have to rent it out. You're living in it, but you're renting it from a company that owns the property, but you own the company and you own the property. And
Wait,
you
what?
yeah, confusing, but
Yeah.
that's the point. It's like those are the ways that people like
Yep.
really maximize what you do. So if you buy a
Oh.
property, your business owns the property, you
Mhm.
pay rent to your business.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
you have income, but it's covering your
It's like a
mortgage.
way to
But
like hack the system.
yes,
Got it.
yes.
Okay, so you mentioned Belize. So how does that work? Like, do you recommend investing like out of the country?
You could. I
Is
mean,
it
if
cheaper? Is it rewarding?
there are tax incentives to doing it, like
Mhm.
in Belize, they don't have real estate tax, so you
Oh
have like
wow.
the benefit there.
What?
Yeah, and there's several places like that. But with
Mhm.
Belize, it's a property. It's called Mahogany Bay Resort, and
Oh
there's a lot
wow.
of people involved in it. But it's a part of Hilton. So the way that the deal works is Hilton is a partner on the deal, and they basically Airbnb it slash
Oh,
use it
so they
as a
kind of like
hotel.
manage it for
They do.
you.
So you don't get as much because of that. But if you go in with other people and
Mhm.
you buy, I think we have, I don't know how many cottages we have, but it's like 8 beach cottages. in an undeveloped area. So it's like, it's going to take
Okay.
time, but
Yeah.
it's more so I was thinking at the time I did it, I was like 28, I think, when I invested in it. And I was like, okay, when I want to
Mhm.
retire, or like, where do people in Florida vacation? So
Exactly. I mean, it's an investment, so you want to
yeah,
hold it long term.
exactly.
That's so
Exactly.
amazing.
Yeah,
So hot topic, housing prices are all over the place,
they
right?
are.
So how do you feel about the future of the housing market?
It's tough because it's hard when it's an election year, or like there's so much going on
Oh,
that's
that makes
causing
sense.
that, I mean, so many people moved to Florida during COVID and right after because we were
Mhm.
open. And if you're, just politically, if you want those freedoms, you're coming to Florida. Well, that's what's causing the prices, that for us.
Yeah.
Other places
And
it's
there's
not
no
as much.
inventory. Like there's
No,
just
that's the
nothing.
biggest thing. It's
Yep.
like, in 2008 it was manipulated. This is not necessarily manipulated, it's lack of inventory, like you
Yep.
said. So I don't see prices going down. I think
Mhm.
I foresee rent control happening in a lot of places, which means,
Wow.
that they're going to cap it at certain areas, which they've done in
Mhm.
places in New York. um, I don't know if they have rent control anywhere in Florida yet. They might in Miami and some places, I don't know. But um, uh, your best bet if you want to get a piece of real estate anywhere in the country is to go to a market that can cash flow, and don't use a real estate agent. And I know saying that is probably going to make people cringe because you're like, what? You're taught? Go to a real estate
I
agent.
know.
But real estate agents work for consumers, not
Right.
investors. They can work for investors,
Mhm.
but a real estate agent also gets a commission when they sell a property. So it's
Right.
their incentive to sell a property or help somebody buy a property at the
Yeah.
highest possible price point.
Yep.
And I'm a licensed agent saying that. It's a different mindset. If you want to buy your first home and you want it to be brand new and you want it to, have all the bells and whistles, you're not looking for a deal, by all means go through a real estate agent. I
Mhm.
have several friends that I would go to and recommend for that person. But if you're looking for a deal, which is something that you buy at a discount, you're likely not going to find it through an agent. So it's
Wow.
better to kind of search those things on your own. And there's softwares and stuff for investors that you can
Okay.
use.
Yeah, I
So
saw one on TikTok and it was like finding like foreclosures and like seized
yes,
properties like through the
yes,
government websites, and
yep,
apparently you can get some really good
yep.
deals.
That's what you
Yeah.
want. For sale by owners. People
Mhm.
that have property and they don't want to list it with an agent because
Yep.
they know they're going to get a commission. You're going to get a better deal that way when you can deal directly with the seller. It's like any business. If you're going direct to the supplier, you're going to get a better deal.
Huge
Yeah,
discounts. Yeah.
yeah.
So let's go back to pageants real
Okay, okay.
quick. So Miss Universe announced that there's no age limit, which means you can be 80 years old and
Which
compete.
is
There's no
insane,
marriage restrictions
crazy.
either. So now that you can recompete, would you ever go back and compete in a pageant?
Oh my goodness. And this is news to me because I didn't know all of that until we started talking today. But I think I would, because I
Yeah.
think that there's like a piece of me that so badly wants like the girl world and being a
Mm-hmm.
mom of all boys.
Yep.
And my husband is like the most alpha man you will ever meet. I mean, he's like
No, I just saw him. He's
football
like
player,
this, like
bodybuilder, arm
super tall.
wrestler. Yes,
Yeah.
builder, like just so masculine that I love that. But I don't have a ton of girlfriends. Being a
Mhm.
mom, it's like you kind of like regress into this like new version of yourself, and all
Yeah.
the other chapters of who you were are closed. So it's like it would be really cool to explore that. I mean, I want to have more kids. My husband and I want 5. So
Okay.
I know. But if I get a girl next, I'll stop. And then I think that could be something I would share with her. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I was never like, I never felt like I was your typical pageant girl of being like thin and tall. And now that doesn't seem to be the norm. It's like you can be anything.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that is me. I'm more muscular and thicker, and I've always kind of had the curve thing going. So yeah, I mean, it may be something that I would look into
Oh
if
my
there's no
gosh.
age requirement. Maybe in a
Let me
couple
know when you
years.
do it. I'll do it with you.
That would be so
Just
fun.
redo that
So
Florida
fun.
USA.
That's right. That's right.
Oh my gosh. So you've already accomplished like so much, I feel like way more
Thanks.
than most people in their lifetime.
Thanks.
But what's like in your future? Like what do you see yourself doing?
So I still do a lot of speaking. I've
Mhm.
been doing some speaking things in churches, and I do some tax and legal talks as well. And so speaking is always going to kind of be a little piece of who I am, I think. So I'll definitely keep that going. But I think the biggest thing that I'm working on right now is my husband and I want to buy land, and we want to do like a whole homestead thing.
Oh,
So,
that's the dream. Wait,
so I
I think it's a
know
Taurus thing because
it
I'm
has
just
to
like
be.
dreaming of just
It's
like
the
having
earth.
that
Yes,
farm.
that's what you want.
I feel like I'm a Jeffree Star
Yeah.
and I want to live on like a yak farm, like in
Love it.
Wyoming and just
That's
ditch
it.
everything.
That's
But I
us.
still have the pink cars and the
Yes,
Pomeranians.
that's it. That's it. Bring them with you. They'll love it.
Oh, the
But
dream.
that's where we're at. We're really looking at like having sustainable land, and um I personally don't want to raise chickens and cows, but I would like the idea of having them on my land, you
Yeah.
know?
No, I agree. And I feel like we can't really trust what's in our food these days. Like, that's a whole nother
Oh,
episode, but
oh
like,
my
we're not
gosh.
safe in America. Like, I don't
No,
want to drink the water here.
no.
Like, it's just
We're speaking the same
scary.
language. That's us
Yeah.
100%. Yes. Yes.
So we're out of time, but I want to
Okay.
wrap it up with a this or that segment. It's
Okay.
my favorite part of the show.
Okay.
So number one, I think I know the answer, but buying
Okay.
or renting?
I'm going to say buy, because if you own the asset, you know, there's benefits to that, and you can still rent your own house, which we talked about. So
Yep.
buying.
Outdoor hiking or indoor gym?
Depends on the time of year, but I do love earth. So hiking
Yeah.
outside.
Okay,
Yeah.
me too. Zillow or Realtor.com?
This one's hard. Realtor.com, I think, is more quality because you're finding more updated information, but Zillow's where you can find other things. Like you'll find more information out on Zillow. However, the information might not be updated. So you might see the properties for sale, but it's not, you know, it's like they don't always update that.
Especially in Florida, I feel like nobody does their job
They
as far
don't.
as taking off listings.
They don't.
Zillow's like my social media right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, when Instagram's boring, I'll just go
There
in
you go.
Zillow and like
Yep.
look
It's
at
fun.
properties
Yep.
and put together a dream
It's
list.
fun.
Football or basketball?
Football.
Okay, that was fast.
Yes, I love football.
Who's your favorite team?
It used to be the Steelers growing
Okay,
up.
of course.
College ball, I like. I don't really have a specific team. I have a lot of friends who've played or play now, so it's like
cool.
it's hard to pick a team. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I'm more so like I'm supporting the player.
Yeah.
So like Travis Kelce's a friend, old friend.
Wait,
So
you're joking.
I swear. So the Chiefs, it's like we root for the Chiefs sometimes, and his brother for the Eagles,
Oh my
who just retired. So we have that, and then the Dolphins we love, and I have a couple friends who played for the Dolphins who now play for other teams. So
Wow.
you'll support them that way, but just football in general. I prefer football over any other sport.
Okay. I prefer pageants. That's a sport to me.
It is indeed.
Okay, credit or cash?
Credit.
That's an interesting one.
Credit. I mean, it's good to have cash right now, I think, because the way the world is, but you never know when they're just going to say, no, you can't access your cash. And it's like, I don't know. And based on what I said earlier, you know, you can buy real estate using credit cards, because this is a whole episode too, but 0% interest on a credit card, you buy something at 0% interest. It's what it is, whether you're paying cash or not, you're just giving yourself more time to pay it off. So if you use that and you buy an asset that's going to make money, that's going to cover the payment, then, you know, you're really not using any of your own money.
We needed to do a whole episode on this, because the one thing about like inflation, which is happening right now, is that the best thing to do is to go into debt. Yep. Because your debt will remain the same, but the value of the dollar is going to go down, and then you owe pretty much less
100%.
money. So
Yep.
you know about hacking the system. I love it. You need to come back on the show.
I'm happy to do so. Yes.
Love that. Okay, so where can we follow you on social media?
The best place is Instagram.
Okay.
Wit.sellers is my Instagram name right now. I'm on Facebook too, but I'm way more responsive on Instagram. Just way quicker.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been such a blessing to be here.